welcome back to the Nurture and Flow podcast. I am your host, Andrea Weaver, and I am a full spectrum doula here in Los Angeles. And for the last 8 years, I've helped families have better birth experiences, even if we have to deviate from the plan. Welcome back, or welcome to the series Birth Ready, a partner's guide to birth. This series has been solely dedicated to you, the partners, to our pregnant moms, our pregnant folks, just trying to get through this journey and finding your place as a partner. And if you haven't heard them already, please go back and listen, or after you finish this, go back and listen. And if you've been with me this far, hello and welcome back. You are in for a really good treat. Today, we're diving into a topic that tends to be overlooked, whispered about, barely discussed: intimacy or sex during pregnancy. I know, crazy. At the heart of this episode, we'll explore why maintaining a close connection with your partner is very crucial during this time. And yes, that does include sex, but it doesn't mean penetration sex or just orgasmic sex. Sometimes it is all the things that lead up to that and may not mean that it gets to that. We're going to bust some myths. We're going to highlight some perks, and give you a lowdown on how to keep the spark alive throughout the pregnancy. And to do it safely and comfortably. So let's get started. So when doing some research for this podcast, this episode, I was dying. The amount of myths that we hear, like as a doula, I think I hear things so much from people that I don't recognize that they're like funny. I'm doing it for a podcast, so it has to be in a podcast form, right? When I'm having conversations and these things come up, it's just like, oh yeah, no, this is the thing, because I want to be as supportive as I possibly can. Because I think sometimes we hear a lot of old wives' tales. Sometimes there's some societal pressure around certain things that we do or don't do with pregnancy, specifically sex and the types of sex you have. And I did just a general search, like, what is the top 20 myths about pregnancy and sex? And it was wild. But I chose the most common ones that are asked to me and some of the conversations that I've had with families, because I thought that was important. The first myth is sex can harm the baby during pregnancy. So I wish I had a diagram for you. One day when I get like big old production money to do this, I will have little diagrams. But there will be a diagram in the show notes so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So sex itself, and normally I will say a lot of times folks think when they're talking about sex, they're talking about penis and vagina sex. Maybe I should give a warning for this podcast. This is for adults, folks that are consenting of consent age, and we will be using scientific terms or readily available terms to describe body parts. I'll try my best not to use slang. I might use it as a joke, but for the most part, we'll be using we'll be talking maturely about this. And so don't shy away from also using this, because it helps identify what we're talking about. Now, for comprehensive sex education and you're kind of getting used to the body, I would suggest looking up some folks on YouTube that can talk to you about the different body parts to help you identify more. But I'm going to assume that you have had a level of comprehensive sex education, especially if you are sexually active with your partner. If you are not sexually active with your partner, this is not for you, but it is for you if you are sexually active, period, because it's just good to know overall, okay? So now let's get to the myths. So back to sex during pregnancy. So a lot of these myths come from penis and vagina sex, better known as penetration sex. But also these come from, without that, what happens with an orgasm. So we'll kind of toe the line there, and I'll make it plain and make it come full circle for the entire experience for us today. So if one is more penis and vagina sex or penetration sex than others, I'll do my best to make sure that we also bring it around town, which I definitely did. Okay. But for this one specifically, I think they were thinking about mostly penis and vagina sex or any toys that someone might use and whatnot. So the baby themselves inside of the womb is protected by an amniotic sac and then uterine muscles, as well as the cervix at the bottom that generally remains closed. Now, with a healthy, low risk pregnancy, penis and vagina or insertion, penetration sex does not harm the baby. If there is any of those risks, though, and I think I should also say this, if you are at risk, pregnant folks, if your pregnant partner is at risk or has a high risk, just check in and make sure some of these are okay. Okay. But back to what I was saying. So those normal sexual activity does not harm the baby, harm the uterus of any, really in any way. And I want to like emphasize on normal. So I would, just like anything else, right? We don't want to be doing anything too strenuous or outside of someone's norm. Again, general regular sex is not harmful, okay? For the most part, with all the low risk pregnancy symptoms, right? Or not, excuse me, with a low risk normal pregnancy. And if you have a high risk pregnancy, again, check in. But for the most part, sex is fine. The baby is protected, warm inside, they're chilling, trust me. At most, you might see a little bit of spotting if we're not a little careful. If it's been a while, you get excited, penis and vagina sex, you can get a little spotty sometimes, but that's not necessarily a cause for concern. It just happens. There's a lot of blood vessels in the vagina. And so as you're entering and exiting during the process, it can, the vigor can cause a little bit of spotting, especially if it's been a while. Okay. So that's not anything to worry about. And if you need to know those warning signs, go back and listen to episode 5 where we talk about the warning signs. But generally, warning signs don't come from sex, generally. Okay. Um, the second myth, and maybe this is like 2 and 3, but I felt like they kind of went hand in hand, is you lose all sexual desire or women go off of sex during pregnancy. All right. So let's have this conversation. I think I'm going to give, so where I think this comes from, there's a couple of places. I think early in the first trimester, most pregnant folks, most women, most moms feel sick in the beginning. They're really exhausted. So, like, sex is the last thing on their mind. It does not mean sex is off the table. It's all these other factors which makes it understandable. So, being sick and nauseous, I'm probably not going to be wanting to be jostling around and breathing heavy, right? So you want to make sure that you're kind of checking in, and the communication that should be had around sex is really important. I really hope at this point, if you're sexually active with the pregnant person, that you guys are communicating in general about these things. But this is a more delicate time. Sometimes folks feel uneasy about their body as it's changing, and so that can do it. But a little bit of reassurance, um, those words of affirmation, loving looks and hand holding or whatever your partner likes, and asking what they like and need from you. Um, Now, there may be there might be times where you just can't, right? Maybe we've started labor and people, and I've seen this, people get a little horny and want to have sex, but water's broken, so we can't do it. At least not penetration sex, but that's a story for another day. Yes. So now the hormonal changes also can affect libido, but it's not an automatic. Often it's the opposite. Women or pregnant folks feel more aroused because of the blood flowing into the vagina, into the labia, into the clitoris, because the blood flow is happening because the baby is growing. And the further along you get in pregnancy, sometimes it just gets hot down there and it mimics arousal for the pregnant person. So it's actually the opposite. I've heard a lot more stories that the pregnant partner is a lot more sexually active and wants to have sex a lot more, and the partner is taken aback, like, "Whoa, what is happening?" So don't believe that. What you need to believe, though, is a communication with your partner about what they want in sex. Okay, but they don't just automatically lose desire. Yes, sickness and hormonal things or hard decisions or life happens. That's period, right? You're not in the mood to have sex all the time. But to write off pregnancy as a means to not have sex, you are incorrect, okay? Check with your partner, have a conversation with your partner, okay? Next, certain positions are dangerous or sex is too difficult. Well, some positions may become uncomfortable. That is true, especially as the belly gets bigger, the vagina starts to get more swollen. Sometimes the ways we used to have sex may be a little bit more difficult to accommodate, but it doesn't mean that it's too difficult. It just means that we have to talk about safe alternatives, right? The best way to do that is to experiment, talk it through. There's all kinds of beautiful websites that you can research, uh, and ones that aren't necessarily porn. They're educational to help you work through them. Funny enough, if you do a search for um, silvers or folks over 65 having sex, a lot of those positions are also helpful. If prior you and your partner were into, say, like some BDSM, some of those positions, or um, more of the tying up and whatnot, please have the conversation with your partner. We, as always, should be checking in. For the most part, positions aren't necessarily dangerous. I would, though, avoid inserting anything into the vagina, just because of bacterias and infections. If we can avoid that and we're listening to our partners, I think we're fine. If we aren't communicating and a partner's just doing stuff because we used to, you might want to pause, because it should be an enjoyable experience for both of you, whatever enjoy means to you all, okay? But for the most part, it's just the size of the belly, right? Missionary doesn't work when you got a huge belly. It's just, and it's uncomfortable. Okay. Sometimes being on all fours and someone behind your partner, or just you being behind your partner, might be uncomfortable for your partner because of, again, the vaginal canal is a lot more tight, a lot more warm, a lot of blood vessels, so it's a lot more sensitive, so it may not be as comfortable. But maybe side lying is, maybe we get a pillow involved, maybe we do a little bit more of this or that in the beginning, maybe this thing used to work before but this thing didn't, and so the arousal piece to intimacy is so equally important. And a lot of the positions that we might enjoy still are easier to get in, even if they might have been uncomfortable before, because we've done a lot of the priming, right? We do not pick green bananas off a tree and eat them. I mean, you can, but you're not going to get the full loveliness of banana, if you love banana or whatever fruit you love, when they're not ripe. Think of sex as something that you are ripening to. And that's why that intimacy part, that communication I'm talking about, is the intimacy. So making sure someone is primed and you are even primed for the experience is really important. Okay. I am no sex educator. I am just well versed in this topic because I've been asked and had to do research and checked in with providers that I know. Okay. Okay. But this is not medical advice. So if you are at risk, your partner, excuse me, as long as your partner is low risk, has a low risk pregnancy, excuse me, For the most part, these are fine. If you're not sure, check in with your provider. But I'm telling you that a lot of the uncomfortableness and uneasiness, especially with these myths, they actually kind of create a distance between you and your partner, may be difficult. And some of these changes would be shocking. It's actually the other way around, like we mentioned. The contractions part, right? So contractions for orgasms can cause a miscarriage. Now, in a normal, healthy pregnancy, orgasms do not increase the risk of miscarriage or preterm labor. They just don't. Sexual activity can even have positive health benefits to the pregnancy. So, what we mean by that is when we talk about like the lead up that I talked about with intimacy, right? It releases a hormone releases hormones and different endorphins. We hear whispers about people having sex or having orgasms during while someone is in early labor or labor, or being really close and intimate with their partner leading up to, because that is the hormone that's released to help birth the baby. Surprise! It also helps tone the uterus. So the more the person is having an orgasm, the more the uterus is toning. Okay. So some, and with when you, a non-pregnant uterus is like what, like this big, so it contracts, boom boom boom, but orgasm, great. With a pregnant belly, the uterus is, this big, and so that contraction is actually just the orgasm, and it rolls over the uterus, and so it can get hard just like a contraction. It flexes like a contraction, but the body is experiencing pleasantness, which produces the hormone that we're always looking for as doulas, oxytocin, and that calms the body. It prepares the body. It releases the tension in the body. It eases labor and delivery. If you haven't already, there is great research around orgasms and labor and delivery. If you haven't looked that up, please do. It's really great. But if you're not even to that level, please understand that orgasms are actually more helpful than anything, especially in healthy, normal pregnancies. It increases blood flow, also, which we need. It creates oxytocin, what we need. It tones the uterus. These are all, the uterus is where the baby sits, just in case you don't know. It helps tone and create better muscle traction. Contracting, it's good to contract. It's okay to contract, okay? Those orgasms are great contractions for someone, but it's not like a consistent, it's a big roll of a contraction, and you can actually feel the tummy because it gets hard. And again, baby safe even with those contractions, okay? So those are things that help, that we're myth busting today. I hope that makes sense. So I want to move on to some of the good things about sex during pregnancy, okay? So there are actual physical benefits to having sex while pregnant. And again, this isn't just penetration sex. This is oral sex. This is masturbation. Um, Sometimes accidental orgasms because the vagina and vulva and the clitoris are all swollen, and so simply riding a bike might do it. Don't laugh, because it can happen. These are all healthy reactions to the body, and that's okay. Sex does increase blood flow. It releases endorphins, or those oxytocins that I told you about. It can improve mood and reduce stress. Hello, somebody. It helps maintain pelvic floor health. Also, uterine muscle health is really good. Um, and folks tend to feel more connected with their partner. Now, the range of connection varies. Okay, I want to be really, really clear here. It's not always about you orgasming. I know. Maybe I should have held your hand when I said that. It's not always about you orgasming. Sometimes it is about you connecting, touching, feeling your partner, seeing what they like, what they don't like in the moment. A lot of that might have changed in pregnancy. It doesn't make you a bad partner. What it means is it's your opportunity to be a curious partner. Okay. In order for trust, there is a renewed trust that happens when something changes and we adjust in kind. And sex is such a interesting topic and often only put in the position of let me have sex with you, let me orgasm, and get out of here. A lot of that is coming from a lot of the uh, religious indoctrine some of us had. Trust me, I get it. I'm a preacher's kid, church girl for a long time, most of my life. My son is a church baby, okay? Um, and it's all about abstaining from sex. And then you start having sex, or it's time to start having sex, and it's like, okay, what do I do? Okay. And the shyness that comes along with being embarrassed about your body also plays your body, your partner's body plays a part. And I want you to be compassionate about that, to be a lover in that. And I think when we're thinking about these things, these benefits don't come because they drop out of the sky. They come because we care about our partner, right? And we care about you as a partner taking care of the pregnant person. You also um, want to connect with your partner. I get it. And it may not be the way that it used to, but I'll tell you, like I tell all my families, nothing about this process is going back to what you used to do other than reacclimating to the life you have. There's nothing to get back to. So there's a joy in the newness of it, to be being curious. This is a new person, a new experience. Why not try something new? Maybe you find your new normal thing that you do, okay? Maybe you do go back to it. But guess what? At least we tried and we enjoyed what we could in that moment because we had to adjust. Doesn't that sound so much better than being embarrassed or allowing your egos to get out of control because sex isn't as often, or maybe it's a lot and you're like, whoa, and we're going to get there in a second, okay? Some emotional benefits with intimacy. So let's start saying intimacy now, okay? It strengthens the emotional bond between you, right? Um, it could be writing a simple note before you leave work. It could be sending a text. Hey, I'm just thinking about you. I'm thinking about you and the baby. I'm excited to be on this journey with you. Or I know you haven't been feeling well, but you still look so beautiful to me. These are like such great things, that words of encouragement that folks want to have. And sometimes our type A queens just refuse to receive them, but do it anyway. Do it anyway. That shit matters. Um, it also provides a sense of normalcy and some continuity in the relationship. Andrea, what do you mean? Just because something changes doesn't mean you have to be a different person. It's you taking the initiative as a partner in this to be curious, to ask questions, to put your ego aside, to not be embarrassed, to be yourself in this moment, to be vulnerable. This person is birthing this baby with you. How much more vulnerable could you be? It's not lame, it's not weak. It is a part of it. And asking for what you need or wondering what your partner needs is what strengthens you, even if it might make you feel small in the moment, because we normally don't have to talk about it, and sex normally just works and we don't have to work so hard about sex. But maybe we should work a little harder. And so hopefully this creates a better dialogue to continue throughout pregnancy and for the rest of your lives together. Um, I've had couples share uh, just moments of connectivity with intimacy and sharing things and feeling so vulnerable, and emotions are there, and your partner is also having so many feelings, and just feeling like, they're by themselves. You feel like you're by yourself, and to sit down and be, you're just talking, and you're discussing things or playing a game together or playing a questions game. There's all kinds of sex games or intimacy games that you can play that help you open up more about your sex life. And it doesn't have to be an inquisition. It doesn't have to be you. It's I. Okay. Um, Now, there are some safety considerations, and we're going to roll through these because I think it's worth mentioning anytime we're talking about being sexually active, period. So, for those of us who may not have had a comprehensive sex education, I'm going to talk about safety because no matter who you with, you should really care about some of these safety things. But with a pregnant person, you should really care and be be smart about this. Okay. Condoms and protection. What, Andrea? This person's already pregnant. Why do we need condoms and protection? Blah, 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 blah. If you have an STI, it is important that we use condoms even in pregnancy. Now, there are some um, STIs that you probably should abstain from having sex, like a flare up from herpes. You might want to abstain, or genital herpes or warts, while you are in a flare up. Okay. There's also all kinds of medication to help keep flare ups from coming on. If you are HIV or AIDS positive and you're working to keep your load low, it's really important to make sure that you're protecting your partner and your baby. Okay. That is not demoralizing at all. That has nothing to do with being embarrassed. It is what it is, but it's important that you continue to use protection when you can put your pregnant person at risk. Um, Sex in high risk pregnancy. So we talked about this a little bit in the beginning. So, it might be necessary to abstain from sex. If there is um, if there's a risk of preterm labor, it's best that we don't activate that uterus. Okay, we talked about that a little bit earlier, and I touched on it. But preterm labor is a little early, so we need to just like chill. Let's not activate the uterus. That also usually comes with some bed rest and not lifting. After an amniocentesis, they also highly recommend abstaining from sexual activity. So, not just penis and vagina sex, orgasms, period, because we don't want to activate the uterus. Now, the uterus is active on its own. Like sometimes going to pee will make a contraction, small, even Braxton Hicks contractions happen. But with an orgasm, it creates a full body experience, which can kick into gear preterm labor. So we want to be careful there. If we have uh, um, a water has broken and we're in active labor, no penetration sex, but you definitely can have um, uh, oral sex or in like self, what they call it, masturbation. You can definitely do that. But when we're talking about high risk, like any placenta, wow, I can't even talk now. Placenta complications as well. You may want to abstain. You should abstain, and anything else. So, if complications come up, you want to check in with your doctor, not because you're an asshole, it's because you want to make sure you guys are doing the right thing. And sometimes when we get this information anyway, if there's a complication, we're not interested in having sex, but it's good to know because you never know. It might be one of those nights. So be careful. Okay. Um, Folks, if there is a safety risk, if you are a high risk family, it doesn't mean you can't have any sex. It might mean that you just need to modify some stuff, right? So I just gave you an example. If you're in active labor and somebody's water broke, no penetration sex, whether it's a real penis or a fake penis or whatever item that you want to put in there, you should not be doing that because it's a cause for infection. But it doesn't mean that clitoral stimulation is not a part of the game. It is definitely still on the table. So you just want to make sure that that's still in place. Oral sex is also perfect. We just don't want you blowing into the vagina itself. Um, STIs or STDs, that term is interchangeable. Um, please be clear about that. They are not worse than the other. Some may have prolonged long-term effects, yes, but it's not about being shameful. It's about knowing what you need to do, right? So STIs include chlamydia, gonorrhea, herpes, um, obviously AIDS, HIV, um, and there's some others as well, right? Um, it's important to continue to get regular screenings. So if you are in a polyamorous relationship or a non-monogamous relationship, it's also important to continue to be safe. And that's where the condoms and protection come in, but also getting regular testing. Because the smallest thing with a pregnancy, where say like BV is or bacterial vaginosis is no big deal, but in pregnancy, it can cause the amniotic sac to rupture. And we don't want that because that usually happens too early, again, prompting preterm labor. And we don't need that. Same thing with trichomoniasis also. So getting checked regularly, being safe, you and your partners being checked regularly if you are having sex with a pregnant person. It's absolutely important. You can really harm the pregnancy, the pregnant person, or the baby if we're not um, careful. Uh, I have had in my lifetime folks that did not know that their partner had other partners and contracted trichomoniasis, and did have to have their baby prematurely for an undiagnosed uh, STI that could have been prevented. Um, and that's no shade to anyone. It's more important to be honest because it affects the person giving birth and the baby, right? There have been experiences where folks are not being truthful about their additional partners or being responsible with their additional partners and passing on something like chlamydia, which affects the baby. They can go blind. Um, I've seen babies break out in complete hives as soon as they're born, all over their face, their eyes, everything from an undiagnosed STI. And what is it worth to you? What is it worth? Is it really worth risking that? I don't think so. So go get checked, wrap it up, protect yourself, which you should be doing anyway. But if we're going to be sexually active, let's be sexually responsible, especially if we are having sex with a partner that is pregnant. That is the least you could do. Um, and then so that's it for the safety concerns. And then we've been touching on this quite a bit, and I'm looking at my notes because I want to make sure we hit everything. Yes. So the last part I want to talk about and just drive home for us today is communicating about sex in a healthy way. Okay. So it's all about starting the conversation. The conversation that we talked about earlier that I alluded to was what someone likes, what they need, all that. This can be weird. It can feel weird. It can feel out of place. It can feel not normal, not natural, but it's important. Okay. Here's how you start the conversation. Choose a relaxed time to talk or schedule a relaxed time to talk. I know scheduling does not feel genuine, but when we do stuff on the whim, y'all, it sets us up for drama, especially if you have other children in your home or you have roommates or people have busy lives. Don't squander the opportunity to have an hour-long conversation, 30-minute conversation that may not even get solved in that conversation, but you're intentional about it, okay? Choose a relaxed time or schedule a relaxed time to talk. Make sure we're using I statements. It is not your job to point out someone else's iniquities. It is not your job. It's your job to talk about you. Express yourself from your perspective, not, well, I feel from my perspective, you do. No. For example, um, if I'm using I statements and I'm going to express feelings and needs without blaming the other person, I'm going to say, let's pick something. The idea that we're not having sex. We haven't been having sex, okay? I'm I want I would like for us to continue to have sex and feel close in that way. Or I would like see, I'm even struggling, right? So yeah, we don't have sex anymore. So um I've been feeling really uncomfortable about this topic because I don't want to impose or make this about me. And I do miss us having sex together. And I know with the pregnancy, things are difficult. I know you've been tired, and I don't want to make you feel like I'm ungrateful or I'm trying to rush you, but it is important to me. And I feel really connected when we do. And I feel connected in other things. But this is something that I really enjoyed with you. And I know you also enjoyed. Um, and I just want to know, like, is there ways that I can make you feel more comfortable with having sex? Or is there something, are there times where you want to have sex and I don't? Or maybe I'm missing some signals from you? Because I do want to still experience that with you without you feeling forced. Can we talk about that? Versus, I don't understand why you're not having sex with me. You keep telling me no. And our whole relationship, we've had sex at least 2 to 3 times a week. And now we haven't had sex in a month ever since you've been pregnant. And I get that you're tired, but I have needs too. That is not how we approach that conversation. It is with a gentle hand. And if you cannot do that, we have some other issues going on. Okay. This conversation also might be that your partner is wearing out because their libido has skyrocketed the later in pregnancy they've gotten. And you might say something like, hey, I've noticed that I clearly have been turning you on a lot. Or you've been very excited to have sex. And I absolutely love that. I am exhausted. Can we tone it down just a little bit? Or, especially for folks that penis and vagina sex, where this comes up a lot, sex might mean that you don't need to orgasm, partner. My heterosexual folks, my woman and man relationships, men, you may not be ready to have sex every time your partner wants to have sex. There is no shame in that. And when I say ready, you may not be able to have an erection in order to have penis and vagina sex. Um, and so now it's time to explore other ways to satisfy your partner. Um, I don't know. There's a book. Damn it. Every time I think of a book, my producer's always like, can you tell us the book and stop doing that to people? I know, I'm sorry. But there's a book that talks about intimacy. And I'll just give you, if I remember, I'll mention it in another podcast, or maybe I'll put it on some social media note or something. But it talks about how, for some reason, in heterosexual male female relationships, that the male partner will feel inadequate to have sex with his female partner when he cannot have an erection, when that is not even most of the time what women are asking for. They're asking for the stimulation, the kissing, the nipple play, the rubbing, the touching, to get someone to the point of climax, which does not include your penis. But that does not make you useless. Because if she didn't want you, she wouldn't be coming to you. She could just rub one out in the bathroom. This is about connecting in this way and keeping your relationship alive and well. And when your partner, when the libido skyrockets, it might be hard to keep up in the ways that you used to, but that does not mean you're an inadequate partner. It just means, and we know biologically, you need a little time to get to a certain point, and that's fine. And it also might be no, not right now. Let me say that again for my heterosexual couples and men in particular. Sometimes you might actually just have had enough with her climbing up your tree, and you are tired, and you say, no, baby, let's do this tomorrow. I want to hold you tonight. I cannot tonight. I'm so tired. Or, hey, I'm just having a headache. I'm having a shitty day. Be honest. And I know you want this. I just can't right now. Even if it doesn't have anything to do with your penis, right? And I want us to be more comfortable doing that. And so, this conversation using I statements, you should be able to share that and asking what would feel more comfortable to her. And also share, hey, I'm used to us having sex in a certain way, but I can't keep up. There's no way I'm gonna keep up with you. Here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? Right? And even preface it like, it makes me uncomfortable to say this, doesn't make me feel like a man. That comes up for folks, right or wrong, no matter what you think about manhood or not, right? Some you might feel that way as a man. Now, as our non, as as we're trying to acclimate to this piece, and this is why I'm harping on it, it's not about anger. Before you get mad, think about what's fueling you to be angry. And a lot of times, anger is the last emotion. There's a whole bunch of other stuff coming up before you get angry. And sex is so delicate. It's such a delicate dance. It's so personal. It's so private. It is so intimate. It is so unique to your relationship that it's important that we talk about it with care. Um, Women, when a man says no, he means no. Again, my heterosexual folks, sorry I had to deviate a little bit for my all-inclusive language, but we see this a lot. This is my experience as a doula. I don't always see it, but in these heterosexual gender norms of who should be and who shouldn't be, we don't do anything because we should. We do things because we choose to, right? And these conversations are super important, right? So instead of you saying, you never want to be intimate anymore, you never want to have sex with me anymore, or you're having too much sex with me, do you only care about sex with me? Why don't we just try, I miss our intimate I miss our intimate moments. And I want to talk about how we can connect more in that way. Or I love having sex with you. I love your libido, but I can't always keep up. What can I do to support you? Is it okay if we go to XYZ instead of just penetration sex? Or can we use toys? What things would you like to do? I want to keep you happy. Or how do I make sure that I'm kind of, or here's how I can show up for you. These are things that are helpful and solution based instead of also circumventing by putting the onus on the person to make decisions for us in our bodies. It's your body, your rules. That is what I've taught every child that I've ever raised. Your body, your rules. Yes is yes, and tell him is no. And that's just what it is. And in consenting relationships with people, it's also important to also have conversations outside of your bedroom, outside of an intimate moment, outside of distractions, to talk about this because it is important. Now, your level of importance may vary. That's okay. But also you got to communicate that. Okay. Um, to be practical about this too, it's really about practice. So you hear me say that a lot, in a lot of these spaces, and especially in this podcast, why practice is so important. It's really to check in regularly, and check in comfort levels. That's before, that's during, that's after, to see what's what. It's not going to always be like that until you get into your new rhythm. It's going to change in postpartum as well, right? Um, and then just be open to trying new things and adjusting a little bit here or there. You don't have to go all out. You don't have to step out of personal boundaries, but you might have to adjust the ways things happen. Okay. Um, and then respect other people's boundaries and comfort zones. Again, respect other people's boundaries and comfort zones. We do not need to be coercing people. This is a team sport. Because if it wasn't team, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And if you're not interested in team sport, then this section ain't for you. This is a team. You don't nobody gets to just demand sex from someone. This is a team sport. And if you've been doing that, I highly recommend you take a beat, figure out what's going on here, and then approach your partner. Because it's not on your partner to figure out your stuff. I need sex. Do you? Or are we filling a hole? But that's the different, you know what? I'm not your therapist, but I'm just talking to the folks that want to have intimacy that leads to sex and connection with their partner. I'm not here to help folks that are just interested in the physicality of sex and then kind of leaving it all on the table, because we're talking about this process of pregnancy, labor and delivery, and postpartum, and this stuff actually matters. Okay. Um, but keeping that open dialogue going is super important, right? And it's not going to be just a one-time conversation. You guys will come up with safe words and better ways to speak about sex and all that good stuff. But this will build your relationship. If sex is a part of your relationship, some folks it isn't, but this podcast ain't for you. I'm talking to folks that it is. Okay. Be patient. Be patient, not with just your partner. I've had so much patience. No, have patience with yourself. Okay. Um, the best way I think too is to really just keep the lines of communication open and discussing your feelings openly and honestly, but with care. You don't have to be honest and mean. If that's what you got to do, that's protecting you. That ain't nothing vulnerable about that. You got to be honest and mean. Keep it to yourself. How could you be mean to someone that wants to share this experience with you? It just doesn't work. Now, if this person doesn't, and you happen to be someone that this may not be going well, you probably are going to have to back off. You don't get to coerce and create an unhealthy environment around sex because you just want something. Hopefully, as an adult, we've gotten to the point where we're um, being responsible here. Sex is about a conversation with your partner. You're having a conversation while you're having sex. Maybe you're not speaking, but we're communicating together. And to keep that going and keep it consistent, it is all about practice over time. We have gone completely over today. Well, maybe not, just a little over. This is longer than my normal podcast, but that's all right. But we have covered quite a bit today, a lot of information about intimacy. We talked about debunking some common myths and highlighting emotional and physical benefits. We also discussed the importance of safety and healthy communication with your partner. I want that to like sear in your mind. Sear it, sear it, sear it. And I'm thinking like as a takeaway, is to remember that just like this pregnancy is a journey, so is intimacy. But it's what you and your partner navigate together, right? You notice how a lot of this is about how you approach it, but it's for the good of your relationship. You could play this for your partner and it would apply to them as well, right? Hopefully we're uprooting some shame around sex too, which also comes with it. Again, we talked about some body consciousness and uncertainty there, which also might come up, and that's also okay. And to embrace that and and really care about someone in that way, and finding ways that you can support more intimacy with your partner, and that's for both of you if you're both listening. It's all about staying connected, being open, finding what works for both of you, not works for everybody else, but what works for you all. Okay, don't be afraid to communicate, to experiment, and most importantly, enjoy this unique time in your relationship, and I promise you, you got this. Okay? Make sure you get on your Zoom next week. I believe we're at episode 6, so we have postpartum in the pipeline ready to go. We're going to get deep into that. And that'll be wrapping up our partner series. I'm actually working on a guest to talk about his experience as a partner last year. And I'm super excited for you guys to hear that. But before that episode, postpartum is next. We deep dive there. We talk about postpartum plan and what you all should be thinking about in postpartum. And that one, I highly recommend grabbing your partner so you both can listen to that. But it'll definitely still, in this series, be focused on partners. Okay. Well, that is the end of the Nurture and Flow podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today and let me run my mouth. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, leave a comment. You can also reach out with any of your questions or topic suggestions. I'd really love to hear from you. And you can send those to either hello or hi at nurtureandflow.com. You can also find me on all the things at Nurture and Flow Birth. And for some freebies or just some good one pagers to kind of help you guys navigate this pregnancy space, go to www.nurtureandflow.com. Once again, that is nurtureandflow.com. Thanks for listening. See y'all later.